Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into something fascinating and yeah, kind of tricky, the world of intangible assets. We're breaking down IAS 38. That's the official rulebook accountants use to try and put a value on all the important stuff you can't see.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. For a company like Coca-Cola, is it their factories? Or is it their secret formula and that iconic brand name? For a tech company, it's probably the groundbreaking software they've built. These things are incredibly valuable, but you can't exactly lock them in a safe.
And look, this isn't just some fun thought experiment. It's a huge puzzle for investors, for managers, for anyone trying to understand a company's real worth. How do you put a number on an idea? Well, that is exactly the problem IAS 38 tries to solve. So before we can even think about putting something on a company's books, it has to get past three very strict gatekeepers. Let's walk through what these tests are. Here they are. Every single potential intangible asset has to check all three of these boxes. No exceptions. It has to be identifiable, the company needs to have control over it, and it has to be expected to bring in some future economic benefits. Let's break down what each of those really means.
First up is identifiability. This is all about making sure we're talking about a specific thing, not just the company's general good vibe or reputation, what accountants call goodwill. The test is pretty simple. Could you sell this thing by itself, or does it come from a contract or a legal right? If the answer is yes, it passes gate number 1.
All right, next up is control, and this one is huge. The company has to be able to get the rewards from the asset and, just as important, stop anyone else from getting them. A patent is a perfect example. You have legal rights protecting it. But what about a team of brilliant engineers? Well, as valuable as they are, a company doesn't control its people, so a great team doesn't get to be an asset on the books.
And finally, the easy one. The asset has to make you money or save you money, period. It's got to help the bottom line, either by driving up sales or by making your operations cheaper. If it passes all three of these tests, it's officially in the game.
Okay, so let's say an item makes it through those three gates. Awesome. Now what? How does it actually land on the financial statements? Well, it turns out there are two very, very different roads it can take. You've got two main options here. A company can either go out and buy an intangible asset, like a patent or a customer list, or it can build one itself from the ground up. And trust me, the accounting rulebook for these two paths could not be more different. Now get ready for what is probably the single most surprising rule in this entire standard. Let that sink in. If a company spends decades and billions building a world-famous brand from scratch, it is absolutely forbidden from putting it on its balance sheet. On the books, its value is zero. And that's the obvious question, isn't it? It feels totally wrong. I mean, the brand clearly has value, so why isn't it an asset? The thinking goes like this. It's basically impossible to reliably separate the money you spent just on the brand from all the other money you spent just, running the business. Marketing, sales, everything gets mixed together. So to keep the numbers consistent and reliable, the rulemakers just said, nope, you can't do it. Okay, so for the things you can build yourself, like new software or new process, we hit the most critical split in the entire standard, the great divide between research and development. Think of it like this. Research is the dreamy, blue skies phase. You're exploring ideas, asking what if. All that money you spend, it's an expense. It hits your profits right away. Development, on the other hand, is when you move from what if to here's the plan. You're actually building the thing. And this spending, this is what can potentially become an asset on your balance sheet. But it's not a free pass. To turn those development costs into an asset, a company has to jump through 6 pretty high hoops. They have to prove the project is technically possible, they plan to finish it, it will actually work and make money, and that they have the cash and the people to get it done and track the costs. You have to meet all 6 of these criteria. It's a tough list. So let's say you did it. You passed the tests, cleared the hurdles, and now you have a shiny new intangible asset on the balance sheet. Fantastic. But the story doesn't end there. Now you have to figure out how to account for it over its life. Companies get a choice here between 2 models. The cost model is the simple one. You just stick with the original cost and write it down over time. The revaluation model lets you mark the asset up to what it's worth today. But there's a huge catch. And here's the reality check. You can only use that revaluation model if there's an active market for what you have. I mean, think about it. Is there an eBay for unique software patents or specific brands? Not really. And because of that, almost every company in the real world uses the good old cost model for their intangibles.
The next big decision is figuring out the asset's useful life. Is it finite, like a patent that expires in 20 years? If so, you expense its cost bit by bit over that period. That's called amortization. Or is its life indefinite, like a super strong brand that could theoretically last forever? In that case, you don't amortize it, but you do have to check it for any drop in value every single year.
All right, let's bring it home. What happens at the very end of an asset's life? And what's the big takeaway from all these rules?
An asset gets taken off the books for one of two simple reasons. Either you sell it, or it just stops being valuable. As soon as it's not contributing to the business anymore, its time on the balance sheet is up. So why should you care about any of this? Because these rules have a massive real-world impact. The decision to expense or capitalize spending can totally change a company's reported profit. The value of these assets can make a balance sheet look incredibly strong or surprisingly weak. It literally shapes how investors perceive a company and its innovation.
And all of this leaves us with one final big question. In an economy that's so heavily driven by things like data, software, and brands that can't even be put on the books, are our accounting rules struggling to keep up? Are they really showing us a company's true value? That's definitely something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.